Tenebrous Tingles.
Hi, welcome to Tenebrous Tingles. If you are new here, we talk about spooky stories, lovely legends, and folklore. And if you're not new here, we're really glad you're back. I'm Eve,
And I'm Zandi.
and today we are talking about some Arizona stories. So,
Yay!
Zandy, are you going to go first today?
I can. I am going to be talking about the Tombstone Thunderbird.
Okay.
So the Tombstone Thunderbird started on April 26th of 1890. There was an article published in the Tombstone Epigraph of 6 gunslingers who shot the Thunderbird down. This was said to be a creature with a wingspan of 160 feet, and it was 92 feet long. He was nearly 5 feet across the middle, not circumference, just across.
Why did they shoot him down?
It was a scary monster in 1890.
He doesn't sound so scary so far, but all right. I'm willing to listen. Let's go.
So it says that his head alone was about 8 feet long. He didn't have any feathers. He had leathery skin, and that his wings were more like patagia rather than real wings. So not like a bird's wings.
He's a dragon.
Say that again.
He's a dragon.
He's not a dragon. He's a bat lizard.
That's a dragon.
No, dragons, by definition, have 6 limbs.
Oh my gosh.
Dragons have 6 limbs. A wyvern has 4, and this thing had 4. So it would be closer to appropriate to say that it was a wyvern, but more than likely it was a pteranodon.
Oh, ooh.
Patagia is the bat-like skin membrane that goes between fingers rather than having wings like a bird. I am over here making flapping motions. Just we're gonna ignore that part.
Everyone imagines Zandi making flappy motions right now.
With my fingers outstretched like a bat, not like a chicken. So it says that the wings were easily penetrated and torn by bullets.
Oh,
It also said that they hauled it back to town using 2 horses, and I don't know what kind of horses these were that could pull a 160 feet long animal.
those poor horses.
I know, right? Those are very impressive horses. Can you imagine the size of 2 horses that could drag an airplane back to town across the desert?
Right. Yeah, those were some monster horses.
Right? That's the part that I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, this story seems a little fake, not because of the size of the animal, but that it only took 2 horses. There's this thing with the Tombstone Thunderbird. There's a photograph, and if you Google the Tombstone Thunderbird, you will see this photograph up on the internet. And that's just it's something somebody made recently, fairly recently, to show what's described as having been seen. But people have said that they have seen this original photograph, and they've been saying that for decades and decades now. And this photograph doesn't exist. They've never been able to find the photograph. There was no photograph published with the original article of on April 26th of 1890 in the Tombstone Epigraph. You can go online, you can pull up the article, you can read it for yourself. There's no picture, and in fact, they did not have the ability to publish photographs at that point in time in the newspaper.
Okay, but they did have the ability to take photographs, right?
They did have the ability to take photographs, but they did not have the ability to publish them in the newspaper. So them
Right, but that could explain why it's not there, but maybe it existed and it, people just it just got lost.
I don't know. It's possible, but we're going to get into that a little bit more later. So, people are saying that they have absolutely seen it, and other people are saying, no, this thing never existed, and there's no evidence of it ever existing. So, other people are like, wait a minute, is this like a Mandela effect situation where it existed in one
Hmm,
timeline and it was in the magazine or the newspaper in one timeline, but it wasn't in the newspaper in another timeline?
possible.
So, in the 1930s, a man came forward. Well, it, in the late 1930s to early 1940s, it's not said exactly what year it happened, a man came forward at the El Dorado festival that was held in Tombstone, and he said that he was one of the men involved in this shooting. But he said that the article published in the epigraph was not what really happened. It was heavily embellished. He said there weren't six of them. It was just him and his friend, so there were only two. They weren't gunslingers that had been hired to go out and kill this wild creature that was eating people's livestock. They were ranchers, and that they had misprinted it badly on purpose because they thought it would increase their interest.
I mean, that tracks
Hmm.
with journalism,
It does.
honestly.
Yep.
But did they ever say why they were shooting? I mean, they just saw it and said that's eating our livestock. We should
They
kill it,
they
or
were
was there actually
ranchers.
a reason?
I don't know.
Okay,
They were ranchers, so probably they were seeing this large predatory bird, creature, lizard, pterodactyl thing over their ranches. And this is the 1890s. They didn't really do conservatorship. They, if it was a big scary monster, you shoot it, and that's all.
fair enough.
Yeah, different times. It just was. So he and his friend, they chased the creature, but they missed. They never hit it. The horses were spooked and wouldn't continue the chase, and he said that him and his friend were scared too, so they didn't really try to make the horses chase it down any further than that. They never killed it. It flew away. It escaped. It was not killed. It was not dragged back with two horses. It was not as big as they said either. They said that it was not a 160-foot wingspan, it was a 30-foot wingspan, which is still really, really, really big. But
Oh my gosh, they made this huge story up about like a a worn out looking pigeon that just happened to be real big.
no, because he still had Patagia. He didn't have feathers. I don't. Maybe passenger pigeons were really big because they're extinct. No. Um. I don't know, but yeah. So this guy was saying, and he could have been lying too. There's no way to verify it at this point, but he did come forward. And the reason why he said he came forward was because there had been a recent reprint of this article in a book about the Old West that was printed in 1930. So this would have been between 6 and 10 years after this reprint came out. 46 to 50 years after the initial situation happened. So this guy would have been, around 70, I guess.
It took him that long to make the corrections?
I don't know if he even saw the original article.
Okay.
This is what these are the first few incidents about the Tombstone Thunderbird. And in 1963, a writer named Jack Pearl, who wrote for an adventure magazine called Saga, he decided he was going to rewrite the tale again. And he decided that it hadn't been embellished enough. So now his
He
article,
saw it and said, bet.
yeah, exactly. Oh, I can do better than that. He called it Monster Bird Carries Off Human Beings.
Oh my goodness.
So he altered the date from 1890 to 1886, and there's no specific, not April 26th or whatever, but just this happened in 1886. And it was two,
There were no actual human beings carried off by it, right?
I don't, I don't think so. Not in the original legend, just in this 1963 retelling by Jack Pearl.
Okay.
In his story, there were two prospectors, and they killed the bird. That when they say bird, it actually looks more like a dinosaur in their pictures, and they showed off the body in Tombstone against a barn, and it's got a whole bunch of cowboys lined up with their arms outstretched to show the wingspan. And I've got my arms outstretched and just smacked my knuckles into the wall because I am awesome. So if you hear that, that's what that thunk noise was. He said that the picture was originally in the first story, which is not true because they couldn't have printed it. So this is where the idea of a photograph comes from, is that Jack Pearl is the one that says that there was a photograph and it was of these men with their arms stretched out and the beast up against the wall of a barn to show just how big it was. So you ask about the carrying human beings off. Well, as these guys have brought this bird into Tombstone to show off what they had caught, what they had killed, their prize, I guess, as an exhibition, a second one appeared,
Mhm.
swooped into the crowd, and snatched up a guy that was heckling the prospectors and carried him off. Not the two that had
Is that documented?
no.
Oh,
This is the
okay.
guy that just further embellished the story.
You got me caught up in
I'm
it.
sorry. So yeah, the original story was written in 1890. This guy was writing in 1963. So any documentation that might have been about hecklers and a second monster carrying off anybody would have been in the first story, but didn't make it. And it's weird to me. It's not the bird doesn't come in, and if it's he says bird, so we're gonna keep saying bird because in the 1963 story he says bird. So this second bird doesn't come in and kill one of the two prospectors that had killed its mate, partner, friend, whatever.
Oh,
It didn't kill one of them, but it killed somebody else who just happened to be in the crowd saying, "I don't believe you. That thing's made of paper mache."
what an enormous paper mache project. But now I have ideas. Do you want to make a paper mache Thunderbird with me?
No,
Aw.
you're the artsy one. That is the story of the Tombstone Thunderbird and how it came to be and everything that we know about the story and the photograph that may or may not have ever existed, and the original printing and the reprinting, and then the monster bird carries off humans. There are tales of thunderbirds throughout various indigenous cultures, especially in the West and Midwestern US. And I wanted to bring in at least one of these stories. And because the Diné people are the most prevalent in the area of Arizona where the Tombstone Thunderbird occurred, I wanted to go and look and see what the indigenous stories are for the Thunderbird in that area, what the lore is for the Diné of the Thunderbird. And what I found was that there is a tale of a monster bird and it would terrorize people by hunting them and feeding them to its young high on a mountain. There were these two warrior brothers.
And that's in
It is
multiple
in
stories?
this is the story of the Diné people. I don't know if it's in multiples or not.
Okay, so this is
So this is the story of the
gotcha.
Diné people. There are two brothers and they are very common in the lore of the Diné people. They are known as Monster Slayer and Born for Water. They were on a mission to meet their father, the sun, and throughout this mission, they slew various monsters and solved various tribulations and had different supernatural forces attempting to stop them on their travels. And in this case, there was this monster bird that was hunting people, and so Monster Slayer, with the help of Born for Water, they went and they slew the first bird at Red Mesa, and then they went and found the other two adult birds who were taking care of their young. Those were at Shiprock, and they killed them, but they did not kill the two young birds. Those they turned into the first owl and the first eagle. And that is the story of the Thunderbird that I could find of the Diné people. So that is what I have. What did you bring for us, Eve?
Okay, so I ended up with a few different stories because I started looking for one thing and then I just ended up wandering off my own path.
So we're doing another adventure through a state like I did with Alaska?
It's an adventure.
Hooray! We do like adventures.
So I started looking at the star people of the Hopi and Zuni people. I just really loved this idea. I ended up in a different place, but I have a little bit about it just because it's a beautiful story. They're seen as helpers and teachers and protectors, and they're in both the Hopi and the Zuni legends. The Hopi stories talk about kachinas, or spirit beings who interact with people. And in some stories, they actually, came down to lead the Hopi people during migrations to help keep them safe. And they are considered the elder brothers that are watching over us from the stars.
I love that.
Yes, it's lovely. The Zuni stories refer to them more as guides, speaking through celestial signs. So, not coming down to speak as a being so much, but like giving signs to help them with things like planting cycles and community life, learning what to do to live in harmony with each other and nature.
Okay.
Um, I love that idea of the night sky being filled with guardians and friends just watching and protecting. But I didn't get very deep into that because, again, I wandered off. I was asking, the local people that I knew, which are not many, about it, and they actually ended up telling me different stories. So I would like to give those stories.
Please.
So that's all I have for this. Yeah. So first of all, I'm gonna give a shout out. Our first actual shout out to Mark Sullivan, who helped me. He told me he didn't have his own stories, but he told me stories from his mom and an unnamed friend. So, hi, Mark Sullivan, and thank you.
Hi, Mark Sullivan.
And hi, Mark Sullivan's mom and friend.
Hi, Mark's mom and friend.
I I'm gonna start with the Hotel Monte Vista. It's in Flagstaff. And his mother was actually the manager of that hotel in the, I think, 90s. And she was working an overnight shift one day. And she was behind the counter. I think she was doing paperwork, but she was working. And a man walked by. She looked up and he was carrying the register book.
Excuse me, sir. Sir.
Right? He was dressed in clothing from the 30s or 40s. And he just smiled and nodded to her really amicably. And then
You can't just tote off our register book no matter how dapperly you are dressed.
I mean, you could carry off my register book if you're smiling and dapperly dressed, probably. Just, you know, we're civilized here. But she was working alone that night and the clothing was really out of place. So it kind of took her by surprise. And so she rubbed her eyes and looked again and he was gone.
With her register book.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he had his own.
I'm teasing.
Maybe it was a ghost register book. I don't know. That part was actually not related. And so looking it up, there's a lot of stories in the hotel.
I like hotel stories.
It's so beautiful too. I looked it up and it is a really, really pretty hotel. It opened in 1927 and they've really worked to keep it about the same as when it opened. So when you look at the pictures, like it is a very different style than, you'd see in most hotels now. There is a very popular story of the lady who moves her chair to sit by the window. She was an elderly long-term tenant of room 305. And when she lived there, she would sit in the rocking chair by the window and just sort of watch the world go by outside. There was not much more that I could find about her or her life, but since her passing, there have been several incidents in that room with that chair. Guests and staff both have seen the chair rock on its own, or they've seen it moved next to and turned toward the window, even if that's not how they left it. Some have actually seen the movement, and some have just seen it restored to that spot when they looked again. And anywhere you move it in the room, it always ends up back by the window. And there are some that have even seen her apparition in the room, in the chair, or they've heard knocking in the room. I don't know what the knocking is about, but yeah, there's some that have even seen her.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could have found out more about her and just, there just wasn't a lot to find. There were a lot of stories, but there's lots and lots of ghost stories there. But it was during, Prohibition time, and a lot of the stories are around a lot of violence and murders, some self-ending. I'm not saying that in that way to be cute. It's just for self-censorship to be sure that we can be published everywhere. So I basically stuck to the stories that I liked because I can do what I want and I like the happier stories,
Shock.
like the lady by the window. There's also a dancing couple that shows up frequently waltzing through the lounge, and they don't really acknowledge people like, like Mark's mom saw the ghost interact with her. They don't really care about you.
Morticia and Gomez are here for themselves and each other.
Right. They're formally dressed, and they're laughing. So it looks like a happy experience, but there is not any history about who they are.
I just told you who they are.
Oh, you're right. Absolutely. In that hotel, um, there is also a baby that cries in the basement, and nobody knows why. That one's described as one of the creepier stories. But yeah, I wish we knew more about the history of where those things came from. Like who the couple was or who the lady was, because she actually did exist. Like she was there. I mean, the rest, who knows? But they've been seen by staff and guests. And then the Mogollon Monster was the next one, and I actually really, really loved this one.
Okay.
There's no beautiful hotel attached to this one, but so Mark had a couple of friends who were driving on I-17 just past the Stoneman Lake exit. That'll probably make sense to the people that are near that area. It was dark, but it's important to note that they were totally sober and well rested. They were driving 75 miles an hour when they noticed something really large running next to and keeping pace with their car.
Wow.
Right? How trippy would that be? Not that it was there, but that it was keeping pace. But also that it was there. And then it ran way in front of them, so it gets even, crazier. I don't know if they slowed down, but anyway, it ran in front of them, so maybe it was like super duper fast, or maybe they slowed down. And then they saw it a little bit further down the road because they kept going. And when they saw it, it was standing on its hind legs. It was about 7 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Um,
So not a cheetah.
Probably not a big cat. They looked at each other like once in disbelief when they like right after they'd passed him, and then they did not say another word for the rest of the ride home. They were just stunned and just kept driving.
Nope. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. You didn't see that. We didn't see that. Nope. 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 Nope.
Right. Like, so they were a little bit traumatized, but I'm really glad that they had the story to tell me.
So what is the Mogollon Monster?
Yes. So finding out more about him, I kept referring to it as a him. I don't know why. It could be a her, but for my purposes, I just said him. So the Mogollon Monster, by some accounts, is like this really scary, basically Arizona's Bigfoot. It's often seen or heard screaming along the Mogollon Rim, and it's described as a hairy, large humanoid with glowing red eyes. Large as in between 7 and 10 feet tall, depending on who is telling the story. There are some stories of aggressive behavior or attacks toward Arizona pioneers, But when I looked into those stories, because I wanted to check the sources, there was no evidence that the violence that was described had even occurred, that the people involved had ever existed, let alone that the Mogollon Monster had been the culprit. By most accounts, the Mogollon Monster is actually a really peaceful creature. And it has some roots in Apache stories where he's portrayed not as a menace, but as a guardian of sacred land. He's a caretaker of the rim and the people there, warning them away from dangerous cliffs or punishing those who disrespect nature.
As they should be.
Right? No one has been harmed that I found a credible story about. There are lots of hikers that, if they don't have sightings or a hearing, they do describe the feeling of being watched while they're there. The theory that I really like is that he's watching out for lost travelers in those pines so he can help. So he can keep them for, from wandering off a cliff or, whatever shenanigans can happen.
So much nicer than the Kalupalik.
He seems like a nice guy. So he is painted as this really scary creature in like gory campfire stories, but the older stories describe a protector spirit, and it is tied to Apache, Navajo, and other native stories from way, way before the European settlers arrived. The thing is, the stories are not violent until settlers become involved. And like that's just how they related it. They related the stories with a lot of fear. The Mogollon Rim is considered a sacred place in many traditions, and the monster has likely been part of those stories for centuries. Some campers have described it as being a really easy area to become disoriented and end up going the wrong way. It's considered dangerous because it has steep drop offs and deep canyons where someone could easily get lost or fall due to the rugged landscape, sometimes in, kind of unexpected steps. So, a protector keeping people from falling off cliffs would be a pretty good thing to have around.
Absolutely. I'm afraid of heights.
Right. That's a good thing to have there. The written stories that describe the monster as we know it today started appearing in the late 1800s and early 1900s when frontiersmen and ranchers started publishing their experiences of seeing a large, hair covered humanoid creature along the rim. And since they didn't grow up with generations of hearing these tales of a protector, they probably saw this creature in a fearful light and added, that element to their stories. And so with that fearful tint to the story, he sort of became a monster rather than a guardian in those stories. But I really liked reading the original things about how he just sort of watched over and, took care of it, punishing the people that were disrespectful. And the stories that I did find, I only have this one from a direct source. He didn't do anything with them. He played with their car a little bit, And if you can run 75 miles an hour along a car, why would you not do that every once in a while just to mess with the people inside? There's no stories of anyone being harmed that I found. Like, there's a legend of a pioneer being murdered, but when I looked into it, that pioneer had actually not existed, and it was just a really, really gory campfire tale. Kids, and the versions of it got crazy violent, so
Were they written by Jack Pearl?
probably not, but maybe, I don't know. So yeah, that's what I have for Arizona. Sort of a jumbled mess. So I was just corrected about my pronunciation, about the Mogollon Monster, Mogollon. And I mispronounced it through the whole thing, but we already recorded and edited. And so, in the interest of still releasing on time, I just wanted to leave it as it is. I'm sorry if it drove anybody crazy that I pronounced it so badly through the whole thing, but I've got it right now. Mogollon. I just wanted to acknowledge that. So Mogollon Monster. And sorry.
Some of you may be wondering why we did not do a certain well known entity when we started doing Arizona. And the reason is that we don't want to call things, we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to say its name. We're not trying to bring that to come get us because while we may want to be kidnapped by fey esoteric beings, that's not it. Not that one.
Yeah, not
Mm-mm.
that one.
It's going to be the same when we get into the Appalachian areas. There are certain things we're not going to be talking about because
We're selectively sick.
we are. We didn't see that. We didn't hear that. Neither did you.
Did you hear that?
Mm-mm. I didn't hear anything.
No.
Eve did the story of the Mogollon Monster, and we love that story. And we find it really interesting that there are tales of these humanoid entities throughout most states, honestly.
And while I found stories about, gentle stories and things, I'm not advocating that you should like try to pet one or something. Like, just want to put that out there. There are versions where aggressive behavior is seen. So, I mean, don't have my voice in your head saying that's your friend if you see them, you know? I don't want the responsibility for if I'm wrong about them being gentle giants. I hope I like that version of the story and I told it like I like it because I can do what I want. So, um,
So next week, what are we doing?
it's Michigan, right?
Yes, Michigan
No.
AM. Sure. I think it might be.
Arkansas. So I don't know what I'm doing for Arkansas yet. So
I don't either.
if anybody has an idea, I would love to get an email. Um, but yeah, there's some states where I already know, like, and excited to get there. And then there's some states where I just end up learning something really cool. And I like both things. So,
Don't tell me what those are, but tell me a couple of the states you're really excited to do.
okay. So Missouri, I'm super excited about. Um, I have a small obsession with an event that happened there.
Oh, small. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you already know probably
I
just
do.
from that. Yeah. Um, South Carolina because I've been to a place and I thought it was so beautiful. Like I just went because well I can't really say without giving it away, but I will say this. I will drive for hours on end to go look at a particular rock or tree.
She
Um,
recently drove like 2.5 hours to go look at a penny.
it was the world's largest penny. Thank you very much. And it's a really sweet story. Um, so yeah, so South Carolina and Missouri and New Mexico.
I'm excited about Tennessee and Mississippi.
Okay.
I'm also excited for Florida and Illinois, but for different reasons.
Yes, that will be fun. Um, yeah, so we don't know what we're doing for Arkansas, either one of us, just yet.
But we will.
Oh yeah, we will.
So thank you for joining us for Tenebrous Tingles,
Thank you for listening.
and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.